Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. Today, we're going to have a fun chat with Becca Rushin, and we're going to talk about historic adaptive reuse, applying LEED. But before we get into those projects, Becca's got a really interesting career. And Becca, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
We always like to start off, and because we're going to talk about careers and how'd you get into sustainability, but take us back. You know, where'd you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Yeah, I grew up on the Georgia coast in Savannah, Georgia, right on Intracoastal Waterway. Yeah, absolutely. And so growing up in Savannah, I was outside a lot, and I ended up going to college at the Sewanee, the University of the South.
Tennessee, yeah.
Yep, it's on the Cumberland Plateau and has a huge campus. And that really made an impact on me early on. I took a class there called Walking the Land, which was all about kind of getting outside and learning about the ecology of the space, reading a lot of kind of classic books like Aldo Leopold and, you know, other kind of environmental literature. And after college, I decided somewhere during my studies, I read Bill McKibben's Cradle-to-Cradle. Sure. And I was kind of hooked. I was like, look, I've never really heard about this sustainability thing before. But it makes a lot of sense, and, you know, why would we not do things this way? So I decided to go to grad school and ended up going to grad school over in the Netherlands at Utrecht University. It's a large state school, and they had an institute for sustainability. So based on what I had learned about kind of European environmental policy during my undergraduate studies, I felt like that would be a good place to kind of learn more. So I ended up getting my undergraduate degree in environmental policy and Spanish, thanks to some fun study abroad trips, and pursued a master's of science in sustainable development and environmental policy and management while at Utrecht.
You know, and sometimes the majors we get, or in that case, your masters, sometimes they're not quite applied in our career, but I'd have to assume with what you're doing with Jamestown, and we'll get into that with some development, is some of that, is it coming in useful?
Absolutely. I never really thought it would be so useful. My dad likes to rib me. A few years back, I testified before the state legislature regarding benchmarking ordinances in defense of those. And, you know, he joked that he never thought I would actually be using that environmental policy degree, but I have.
There you go, Dad. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny when we all had that tipping point or that breakthrough. It's like, wow, sustainability. I didn't know that, or I didn't know that part of it. But I'm sure being in Europe and Amsterdam, that must have just locked it in for you, huh? Just really rubbed off on your sustainability.
Yeah, I've always liked to travel, and, you know, coming from, you know, the deep South, I've never seen sustainability as kind of mutually exclusive with, you know, a kind of busy, happy, fulfilled life like the one I grew up living. It seemed to me just a way to do things better, or like a work smarter, not harder kind of approach. And that was a lot less scary to me than a lot of, you know, environmental activism and kind of other paths towards environmental change. It seemed to be a little less polarizing and ultimately just makes sense. And certainly in real estate, I think there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to sustainability. You know, I think there's other topics that are a little less data-driven and can be a harder sell. But if it's something like, you know, a lighting retrofit or a water energy efficiency project that's going to, you know, improve the bottom line and has the added environmental benefit, you know, you'd be silly not to go for that.
You got to start there with the energy savings, the water savings. Before we get into some of those projects, take us back. Did you have any early mentors? Anyone that really influenced you a little earlier in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of professors that really made an impact while I was still in school. But I think once I started working at Jamestown, I've been here since November of 2012. So, almost 6 or so years. And my bosses at the time, Walter Brown and Jody Mansbach, they were really great for me, both, in general as supervisors, managers, but also at that stage of my career. They both had kind of two different skill sets. Jody was really great at kind of marketing and program management, and Walter was more of a subject matter expert. He knew a lot about green building, and kind of having both of them as mentors early on, I think really served me well. They really let me kind of jump in, roll up my sleeves, and kind of do the work. I also kind of cut my teeth and provided administrative support, and did a lot of other less glamorous things as part of my role. But they were the ones that really kind of gave me the leash that was long enough for me to learn that this is really what I love and what I'm good at.
And now you've been at Jamestown, you said, a little over 6 years, and you're the Vice President of Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility. So I think some titles in industry will focus on the real estate or improving the buildings, but here you kind of wear two hats. Could you speak to your role today?
Yeah, I mean, sustainability really is kind of an inch deep and a mile wide. I mean, it includes so many different things, and there's probably folks with responsibilities very similar to mine that just have sustainability in their title. But I think corporate social responsibility, really kind of brings in that role that a company plays kind of broader in the community and for all of our stakeholders. I guess, practically speaking, part of my role is running our charitable foundation. So we host a lot of signature events. We're a very kind of food-driven company. And so we host Sunday Supper and Sunday Supper South, for example, where we raise money for the James Beard Foundation and their chef scholarship program in the James Beard House, which is located in New York. And it's meant to kind of bring up chef talent from across the country and oftentimes from underserved populations. Our focus areas are sustainable and local food, parks and green space, alternative transportation and transit, and design. And so all of that dovetails really nicely with our day-to-day business and allows us to get more engaged with the community. And then part of that also, that corporate social responsibility role, also includes things like employee and stakeholder engagement. I do a lot of work locally with community farmers markets. And, for example, community farmers markets operates a market here at Pont City Market. And also, I do a lot of employee engagement, Earth Day volunteer events, that sort of thing. So it's a diverse role, but it's all what I consider fun stuff.
Well, you're getting out with the community. I know that's a really important part of Jamestown's success, right? You have some really awesome projects in certain cities around the country. So, we're at Pont City Market, one of my favorite buildings in all of Atlanta. Can we talk a little bit about how this historic building, it's an adaptive reuse, help me out, LEED corn shell, LEED homes on the residences, and then the Jamestown headquarters here, LEED for commercial interiors.
Very good, Charlie.
You really practice what you preach. So can you talk a little bit about this project?
Yeah, and this is a project that, really had hundreds of people kind of influencing its success, both in terms of its sustainability achievements and, kind of the general vision. I think Jamestown's partnership, going back to the purchase of the building with the city, it really presented a unique opportunity to show that pretty much 100-year-old building can be redeveloped in a sustainable way. And I think it was an important part of our commitment, and it was something that Mayor Reed at the time saw as very valuable. And so we had that commitment to sustainability from the very beginning, before I even joined the project. And myself and Walter and Jody, who were on the development team, we worked with 3 different LEED consultants who ran each of the individual LEED projects. Right. But what was interesting was just kind of the scale and the timeline of the work. It was underway when I joined in 2012, and I don't think it actually wrapped up until just 2016. Sure. And, for example, with some of those materials and resource credits, you can't really close those out until the last construction dumpster is pulled. And so, I think just kind of a long time horizon and just the complexities. The story I like to tell is the windows. We have over 30,000 panes of glass that we replaced as part of the restoration. But thanks to an energy model, we had the data to make a decision to not switch to double pane glass. I think there was some sort of historical preservation component in that decision, but more importantly, the investment in those high efficiency windows would have only impacted the energy model by like 1%, despite the high price tag. And so we decided to restore the existing single pane windows and reinvest those dollars elsewhere. So we were able to do a lot of stuff, kind of behind the scenes, more mechanical, but also more kind of visible stuff like reusing the flooring, putting out waste and recycling. And we're really happy with the result.
And it's a very popular kind of live, work, play building community here, right? It's near the Atlanta Beltline. And so you've done this similarly in a couple other cities too. Just a real quick couple other projects those listening might recognize.
Yeah, we just sold this year Chelsea Market in New York, and we were a big supporter of the High Line, which is a similar Rails to Trail project that a lot of folks are familiar with. Also similar in its kind of food retail focus. We also own One Times Square in New York, where we hold the annual New Year's Eve celebration. From an energy standpoint, a building that's covered in digital signage, with the pharmacy on the ground floor, it makes for kind of an interesting benchmarking story. But that's part of what I do, right, is kind of make sense of all that. And then on the West Coast, we own Ghirardelli Square, which is a landmark that a lot of folks have visited on their trips to San Francisco. And I've really noticed a transformation with that building since we first bought it in 2013 or 2014. Every time I go to San Francisco, I think, wow, if I lived here, I might actually want to come here. And it's been pretty cool to kind of see that activation happen.
You're doing a fantastic job. So what are some other just career highlights, or what are you proudest of so far?
Yeah, I think part of my role here has been to help formalize the sustainability program. And so a lot of that was focused on reporting. So since I have been on the team, we began reporting to GRESB, the Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark. And that's been a really good way to kind of rank ourselves amongst our peers and kind of validate in a more quantitative way, what we're doing. A lot of people don't like reporting. They say it takes up too much of their time and that they would otherwise be spending working on getting projects implemented. I actually really enjoy the reporting. I think much like a LEED certification, I think portfolio level reporting can serve as a really good roadmap. And it's a very iterative process. So each year, we kind of use the reporting exercise to help inform, refinements for the next year. I think the key is you have to be smart about it and how you spend your time, just because, it's a quick cycle and it doesn't leave a lot of time to get stuff done before the year ends. But I'm really proud that we've achieved Green Star or 5-star status, they now call it, for the last few years, I think every year except for our initial report. And so I'm really proud of that. We've got a tough peer group. And I'm also proud of some other awards that our company and properties have earned. Pont City Market received a number of awards, including the ULI Award of Excellence globally. We've also received a Toby Award, which we're very proud of, which is more operations focused. And one of the other portfolio-wide awards that we've received in the past and have pursued again more recently is the Green Lease Leader Award. Green leasing, I think, is a really creative way, in a way that just makes sense, to kind of break down this split incentive between landlords and tenants and foster an environment that's more ripe for collaboration around sustainability.
Yeah, for those listening, you have these projects you're proud of. Sometimes it's validating, you're right, the team and keeping the team kind of fired up. What else can we do? Where can we improve? But I like that you like benchmarking because we have to measure where we at, where can we improve, set some goals, and that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, where do you think sustainability and green buildings might be shifting next? If you look into the crystal ball, Becca, what's around the corner? What are you reading up on?
I think resilience and health and well-being are kind of two buzzwords. I mean, I joke that sustainability in some ways is a buzzword. I hope it never goes totally out of style because that's what my degree is in. But, I think that, aside from just being kind of topics that people are interested in right now, I think both in the resilience space and as it relates to health and well-being, I think there's kind of a desire and a need for more data to back everything up. So whether it's kind of city level data on things related to resilience and what that means for a given building, or, something like air quality sensors as it relates to health and well-being, or, ways to track kind of food availability and what people are consuming. I think those are all, kind of trends that are getting more and more attention.
No, you nailed it. I agree with you both. Resiliency, health, wellness, the new well building standard or Fitwell, it's coming out as fast. Any projects you got going on right now? Anything of note? I know you're busy on many fronts, but anything going on right now?
Yeah, we've got a battery storage project in the works. I know some portfolios have been pretty aggressive with battery storage, and we've got a project that should be installed in the next few months out in San Francisco, and that's an interesting way to shave off our peak demand charges. So it's going in a pretty high-performing building, but it'll still be able to save us money and be cash flow positive in its first year. And otherwise, I think we've been focused on kind of operationalizing and tweaking how we use some of our existing tools, like our kind of real-time energy data and some of our building level energy management platforms, just to get the most value out of those.
No, and it helps, as an owner manager, just, that data is going all the way up to the asset managers, down to the property managers, engineers. So it sounds like a very data heavy company, but you not just look at it, you guys are acting on it. So,
right, absolutely.
On the battery storage, just for a second, I mean, that's, some buildings I work on in New York have ice storage, and some have compared battery storage to that, where you can really shave, you're right, that peak and help on your power rates. But, that lends towards smart grid and doing your part with the utility company. So is there some demand response? Do you work with the utility company on some of that?
We have done demand response historically. It's definitely produced some revenue, but I wouldn't say it's a huge moneymaker. I think I could see battery storage replacing demand response in a lot of markets. I'm not sure how the utilities feel about that, but in a sense, it kind of does a similar thing. It reduces or it increases grid capacity when the grid needs it. And so in the future, I think, there might be a little bit of a shift, at least for us, just because I think battery storage gives a little more flexibility, but it remains to be seen.
Thank you. Let's talk about LEED credentials for a minute. When did you get your first LEED credential? And I've seen you in some classes before, so I think you're a fan of getting credentials and certifications. But just curious, when and why did you get your first LEED credential?
Yeah, I think I got my LEED Green Associate in around 2010. I was in grad school, and studying sustainability, like I said, it's kind of covers everything, right? It was very broad, and so I wanted a way to kind of drill down to some concrete skills, and I felt like the built environment and LEED was a good way to do that. So I pursued my Green Associate, and then in 2013 decided to go ahead and get my LEED AP. And for me, it was a really good way to engage with the industry, particularly when I didn't have a job in the green building field. It was a way for me to kind of keep learning and kind of gauge, which direction I wanted to go in personally. So I found it really beneficial. And of course, since then, I've worked on a ton of LEED projects. So it's also been really important. I mean, now my role is more about kind of managing consultants, but I did have a mentor tell me once that, just remember, you don't have to know everything. Yeah. And I found that to be partially true. At the same time, I feel like the devil's in the details. And so it served me well, even though I'm not necessarily completing LEED projects myself, just to kind of know the ins and outs, particularly as the rating system evolves.
And I think it gives you confidence to ask the better questions. You feel like you can ask the consultant or the architect or the contractor, some more advanced questions because you've got the credential and you've been right there with them. So that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's your specialty? What's your gift? Like, if we were to ask some colleagues, what do you think they'd say? Or what do you think? Self-reflection. What are you really good at?
I think one of the areas where I excel is being able to kind of jump back and forth between kind of the 30 foot and the 30,000 square foot or 30,000 foot,
Sure.
view of things. I work on not a huge portfolio, but I work on a portfolio where I have to kind of know a lot of details about a lot of buildings, interface with a lot of different teams. And so I feel like I can kind of mentally multitask very well, and kind of keep a lot of things going at once. Even jumping back and forth between my, kind of pure sustainability work and my foundation work. I think that's kind of a skill set that I have. And really part of the way I'm able to do that is just by staying really organized. It sounds pretty basic, but it definitely helps.
Well, I know you, and I think you have to deal with a lot of stakeholders, right? So you've got communities, and then you've got, decision makers within the company. You've got your property management teams, your engineers. So you're right. It's how do we improve the building on the ground level? How do we get big projects, solar, battery storage approved? So you must be a really good communicator. And when you show some passion about these projects and a business case, I get the 30 versus 30,000 foot view. So that's fantastic. So let's talk about organization and some other rituals, routines. Like, for those listening, we like to talk about just those pro tips. Like, what keeps you organized? Do you have any routines?
So I'm a filer. So I use folders in my email box. I know that there's search functions that, can apparently, take away the need to do that. Every time I've tried to convert, I've gotten burned, and I've spent like a week kind of catching up on everything. So, do whatever you need to do to get yourself organized, but I think be aware of what works and what doesn't work. And do the easy stuff first. I think if it takes 3 to 5 minutes, that's to me something that I just want to get out of the way. Okay. Again, I've tried to kind of shift. I've read some like productivity books and decide to change things up. And every time I've done that, I've spent a ton of time kind of catching up and digging myself out of a hole. And I think just avoiding hanger, staying well nourished is really important. Sense. I have a routine here at Pont City Market. I go get brunch is what I call it. Perfect. It's just a breakfast wrap from downstairs, nice. But I get it right at the end of breakfast, and that's one of my little highlights of my day.
There's an amazing food hall here at Pont City Market. So are you an inbox zero person? Is that important to you?
Oh, yes, Charlie.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right. So here's my inbox. You're gonna hit me.
Oh, you guys, this is grim.
44,662.
You're stressing me out, Charlie. Turn your computer the other way. I don't think I can handle it.
But in all seriousness, artificial intelligence, search is so good. You just type in Beckett and it pulls up all the emails we've exchanged. So I really see the two trains of thought there.
If it works for you, Charlie. Our brains are definitely wired different.
Sorry to stress you there. Thank you for sharing that. I'm a fan of the bucket list. Some travel, some adventure, a lot of other things on my bucket list. But what are one or two things for you, personal or maybe still a work goal to still accomplish? But what's on your bucket list?
Yeah, so I really want to learn how to play the guitar. Cool. I'm a big music fan, and my whole life I've literally had dreams where I'll be like on stage playing the guitar in front of a huge audience, which is ridiculous because I can't play the guitar at all. But, somehow I just never really, dedicated the time to it and made it happen. So that's definitely something that's on my bucket list.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. You mentioned a couple books earlier that were an influence on you, Cradle-to-Cradle and some other sustainability, but any other books you'd recommend anyone listening, maybe make a good gift?
Yeah. So I'm the mom of a 1-year-old, and I recently, about a year ago, read a book called The Fifth Trimester. It's by a woman named Lauren Brody. And it basically talks about this period of time. If the 4th trimester is like when you're on maternity leave and you've got an infant, the 5th trimester is when you go back to work. And so the book kind of covers a whole range of issues that new moms might be dealing with, or people that work with new moms might be dealing with. And it gives just a lot of really kind of concrete tips for navigating that time and negotiating if that's what you need to do. And I'm a little bit type A, and so I don't know that I necessarily needed the book. I had a great, transition back to work and was excited to get back to it. But, I do think it was kind of reassuring to kind of hear the stories and, hear the advice. And I feel like it's the kind of thing where even if you aren't a new mom, you could still find value in the kind of perspective that it lends.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I've got 3 boys. They're 9, 6, and 4. And I think that's one reason we do this podcast is to share those best practices, share those tips. Hey, this book, gave me some encouragement or just a peek into someone else's view on something. So that's really cool. But yeah, 1-year-old, that's hopefully you're getting some sleep. I know you're busy here with the career too.
She sleeps good. I'm listening to Radical Candor right now. Have you read that one?
No, I'm writing these down. This is great. Tell me about it.
It's just about, I haven't finished it yet, Charlie, but it's about how to be the best manager by being honest in a kind and caring way. Yeah, she's got a nice little axis where you can kind of gauge, your level of candor. But she tells a lot of stories about her time at Google and other tech companies, and I've just found it really kind of interesting so far.
I that's where we can connect and agree is, life's too short. You gotta be honest and not beat around the bush. So I will check out that book, Radical Candor. We'll put the links in the show notes here for Pont City Market and a couple of these books.
Great.
So let's talk a little more about careers. You've been on this fast pace to overseeing a lot of different parts of sustainability, and I know you're really doing a lot here at Jamestown. But just any advice you wish you'd have known early in your career? Maybe someone listening is breaking into this green building movement. And I'm really excited to interview you, Becca, for the podcast because you've given us a peek into, your foundation and just the community and the community gardens here and just some really, it's not just about, say, a certification like LEED, but look at some other ancillary things that are just right there in front of you if you want to get exposed to them. So any career advice for those listening?
Yeah, I think take opportunities and, follow what you love. I ended up in sustainability, basically I skipped a year of high school because I didn't need any additional credits and I felt like I had kind of some extra time. So I decided, instead of basically worrying about getting a job, I just pursued, what interested me. And thankfully I have been able to get a job, but it took a while. I graduated kind of during the height of the recession. And so my first job was with a local government. I worked in their community development department and handled all of their building and land development permits, and also got to work with their sustainability council. So the sustainability work was like a small added bonus to what my actual job was. But even that turned out to be a great foundation and a great kind of preparation to come work for Jamestown, who was kind of more on the other side as an owner and developer. So I think take opportunities and kind of don't overlook something just because you think it might be kind of below your skill level. I had a master's degree and was working in it as an administrative coordinator. And I think it kind of more than paid off for me in the end. But, I think especially with sustainability work, when I was first starting, there was a lot of like director of sustainability roles, but there wasn't a lot of kind of entry level opportunities. And so for me, kind of networking, going to US Green Building Council events, and kind of putting myself out there was really important.
So really good advice. You're right. If you're passionate about it, and I think you said follow what you love, is who knows how the career is going to shake out, but you got to be intentional about some of that along the way.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to know about you or Jamestown or any of your projects right now? This has been a lot of fun. We've covered a lot.
No, come check out Pont City Market if you haven't. Come on Tuesday when we've got our farmers market from 4 to 8 during the season. But no, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, Charlie.
Thanks, Becca, and thanks everyone for listening. This is new, but we have some new T-shirts that say "Teach Everything You Know," and it has the Green Building Matters podcast logo on it. So as a guest, I'm going to get you a cool T-shirt, "Teach Everything You Know," and I think you've taught us a lot today. And just, Becca, thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode, and you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.